Hey everyone, just want to take a minute before we get into the podcast and thank our sponsors of the Forge and Brains podcast. We've got Yukon Forge, World Championship Blacksmiths, Farrier Box, and Wellshod. Without them, the podcast wouldn't be possible, and they help us to bring shows and more episodes to you guys and continue to do it. So appreciate you guys showing the support, and throughout the episode, you'll hear more about what they do and how you can help show your support. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the sponsors of the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Forge and Brains podcast. We're here at the Winter Clinic, the World Championship Blacksmiths Winter Clinic at Wellshod in Amarillo, Texas. Wellshod graciously hosts us here every year, and it is a very cool venue to have it. It's always a great time to grab a hold of some of the people and do podcasts that we know are going to be better in person, and so we just take that opportunity to do it. And today we got a great one. We got Marshall Isles with us from Calgary, and Marshall did a little bit of a demo, a talk, and it was on the history of the World Championship Blacksmiths. But today I think it'd be really awesome for us to hear a little bit more about yourself, Marshall. But thanks for taking some time to talk to us.
No, I appreciate it, Ryan and Gavin.
Thanks for joining us.
Looking forward to this and waiting for a hot minute. I've done different interviews before, and they've either been heavily edited or not published at all. Some people think that I'm a little inflammatory, so I tried to scale back the origin story yesterday at the presentation just a little bit, just to keep it PC and family friendly.
That's not us.
Well, game on.
That's the beauty of Forge and Brains podcast.
No, I'm excited about this because I've never denied anyone a conversation, and I was wearing a shirt actually underneath my good shirt yesterday. It's my company shirt, Unicorn Forge, and it says everyone's entitled to my opinion. I thought I would just try not to be so inflammatory, but yeah, I've the one thing I realized doing the presentation with scrolling through all of those pictures and stuff, there's just so much, and the volume in every single one of those pictures has meaning or memory to the people that are in there. And just to me, it's kind of, if you go on a family vacation, with everybody, and you take a whole bunch of pictures, and next thing you know, you're at Christmas time going through the album. Every single one of those pictures has a different meaning to everyone that was on that trip.
Yep.
So I don't know how many people I've made cry this weekend just by regifting things that had to go home to them.
Yep.
And jumping in Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine and sparking up some of the stories that especially when they got their kids in front of them, or and the kids don't know what kind of heroes their parents were.
Yep.
They just know the guy that gave him an ass whooping and sent him to the room and made him
Mom and dad.
Yeah, that's right. It'd give you a timeout and a little stern talking too. So
No, it's one of my favorite things about you is how much of a steward of the trade you are. Like my opinion, that you take it very serious to keep the education and the history of it alive, and like I've gotten a ton of history and knowledge from you of our past, and so it's made me taking it a little more serious of keeping track of things, and even little items and stuff and little stories to try to keep them alive, because it's, like you said, it's so meaningful to people when you actually bring it up later.
Well, you have to know where you've been to see where you're going. I think that's a fact of humanity, and because we're continuing to reinvent the square wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting when you look at a young person struggling, and you want to tell them, we've tried that 10 times already. It didn't work any of the 10 times.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you believe that it's going to improve.
Magically change.
You chunk off the corners of that square wheel and you show them how to get it moving, and I think that kind of sums up a lot of what you see. There's a lot of young people that don't have a point of reference. Jimmy Sharp, Jay's boy, is here with all of his treasures, or just even a small portion of the treasures.
Yep.
And who's Jay Sharp? Look at all these old rusty hammers. There's 23 different hammer makers. All really cool stuff. You're a hammer maker. You're a tool maker. and what makes Jay's better than all the rest? Well, nothing, except Jay. There's a piece of Jay, a piece of history, and I've had boxes of Jay stuff. I've been beyond fortunate to have spent the time that I got to with Jay, and my experience is different than a lot of others because he was, he loved going to Calgary, and I sort of represented a Calgary connection to him, and so he cut me a ton of slack. I also, carried his water for him a lot. I'm a little bit cagey in that if Jay was going to have a clinic down at his place, well, I'd go down a couple days early, and of course he'd have you help clean up the shop and stuff and get everything ready, but for free.
Yep.
But it was the best free clinic I ever got. So I got 2 days of solid J, and that was education you couldn't pay for.
No,
before everybody shows up, and it's like
such a real view.
Oh, you get to see the human being behind the.
Yes.
Of course, he's busy trying to get stuff ready for when the crew shows up. Because he's going to give everybody a set of tools or something.
Yep.
Which they already bought and paid for with their clinic admission, but it's. I went home with more stuff, more treasures. I just rehomed Jay's personal brand, his family brand, with the Sharp sign on it, back to Jimmy, and Jay had gifted it to me, a long time ago, and it was a safe place of honor, and
yep.
But it needs to go. It's a family heirloom. It needs to go back to.
Yep.
But who would know anything about the origin story of that? When you seen the brand, you saw the multiple forge welds and the construction of it and the thought that went into it, and 99% of the people would look at it and say, well, it's a brand, wow. Moving on.
Yep.
But the story and the man and all of that went into it, it gets lost to the sands of time, and it's like the rest of history. And it doesn't mean anything to anybody unless you make it important.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and helping to preserve some of it or keep it alive or share it, I think is important. I had a big health scare a year ago, and I thought, what happens when you cross over? You leave all your stuff, your stuff behind. I'm a stuff collector, and I got stuff, and. So, I have no money, but I got the world's coolest horseshoe collection, right? Well, hard for the kids to eat horseshoes. Thanks, Dad. And it's the families that, I would imagine you guys are like me. You go to a farm auction, you're because the old grandpa had passed, and you're rummaging around in the shop back there under the dust and everything else. And
I love going.
You do, I do.
And you always look for that tool. I do, where it's like. You knew he spent probably a day making it, and no one could explain what it makes or anything. And I'll probably never know how to use it either. Yeah. But I just want to keep that tool alive for some reason. Yeah. I just want to man.
That's what I always look for too.
Yeah, the favorite treasures I have in my toolbox are those 100-year-old long shank Heller Brothers pull-offs. I use daily use. They've been through 3 lifetimes.
Yep.
And they're hopefully they're going to go through a few more. My J stuff I've been hoarding forever, and then I thought, what's the point? So I've been gifting my way to, all these young people, and but it comes with a story. You're going to get this, but you're going to have to, have a connection, because they don't. We'd had a couple of local Alberta farriers, Al Preston and Ross Kettleson, who were tool junkies like all of us, and had their toolboxes of their treasures and all this J Sharp stuff, and both our widows had showed up at the 40th anniversary of the Olds Classic, which was sort of the progenitor of the World Championships, and they're finally ready to get rid of their husband's treasures. So you have all these kids, in school and just cracking out, and it's in the fall, and you think you might have $1 or $2 in their pocket, all the guys, and I told the ladies that they'd probably be way better off farming them out and selling them on the book face, because they're not going to get any money there for it. And another J Sharp hammer, another J Sharp, Pritchell. It broke my heart, but at least they're out there in the wide world. At least they're getting used.
And they have, even if they didn't bring maybe a great sale that time, they might again the next time too.
Well, they're in the wide world, and they're going to have their journey.
Yep.
And Jay always said, these things are meant to be used. They're not wall hangers. They're meant to be used. And so I want to honor him. I want to for what and whoever Jay was, and Jay was just an absolute fucking legend. But he not the easiest man in the world to get along with. You just have to spend 2 minutes talking to Jimmy to figure that out. He was married 6 times, and they been all over the river. Had two battleships sunk underneath him during World War II. His backstory is So, when his last contest that Jay put on in Vegas, Jay had called me up and asked me to come down and help out because Travis. That's the origin story of that buckle.
So that is and that he called it a match play.
It was a match play. So the match play that you see today morphed out of a Jay Sharp idea. And Jay was all about that. He liked that kind of head-to-head battle.
Yeah.
He's 80 years old, and he'd built 24 different specimen shoes, and the idea was, well, you pick one. There's 2 guys go head-to-head, and whoever, and then we're going to pick another one for the next round, and on and on. So he had. We're going to make these selections and stuff, and nobody showed up for this contest, so it was crushing to him. He had Shane Carter had built this beautiful solid silver mini rose set that was on his trophy, and then he'd gone to the local casino and he'd got $500 silver kind of thing in a little bag, like you're gonna. It was like old school bandito stuff, and he'd done all. He got this magic buckle. The buckle maker was from here in Amarillo. Gorgeous buckle, it. And of course, he thought Travis was going to be a big enough pull. Jay was a terrible organizer. And, you got to phone people, let them know what's going on. You got to, horseshoers are terrible.
Especially during that time. What was like the normal way to let somebody know about a contest?
Telephone, telefax, telefarrier. That was it back in the day, and Jay wasn't equipped for any of that sort of thing, and at that time he was living at Jimmy's place in Vegas in the driveway in a trailer, tinkering around with his stuff. But he had a big idea. Jay was he was that mad scientist, inventor kind of thing, always tinkering, building a better mousetrap. When I first went down to Jay's, I could talk all day just about the Jay stories, but he wanted me to do some architectural drawings of all of his tools because he's going to trademark everything. He was Jay was always combative. He was always on the prod with somebody. It didn't matter whether it was the American Farriers Association or the team stuff. He had his own. He kind of got shut out of the politics part of it. He's always a breakaway. And in so many ways, Craig reminds me of Jay in that he was a grumpy pants, but he was a disruptor, a change agent, and a leader from the front. And so, most of the things that Jay had were, knock-off, rip-offs of something else. So you go ahead, get old pussy pants of Jim Poor about, copying tongs. The wings on the tongs. That everybody, those are Farrier tongs. Well, no, they're just tongs. They just happen to be dead sexy. What's that for? And everybody's got to think, it's for this, it's for that, blah blah blah.
Sex appeal.
Sex. Well, Jay tried to tell me, so when the head comes back and it wants to rest in the little shoulder of and it was whatever. He ripped that off from George Ernst or Roger Freeborn. Roger Freeborn worked for him back in the day, and when they were building a better mousetrap, that was one of the we need some Wiswell. Yep. That's where it came from, and so that's an way just.
He was a pretty passionate dude, obviously though, about it all.
Beyond all of it, and that was, and he had. That to me, Jay was a blacksmith. That's where I learned how to run a coal forge. Yeah. When I went to school in '83 up at Olds College, they had some coal fires, and I hopped in one. That's what I loved. I didn't want to work in the gas. So that was sort of my start. But nobody knew how to run a coal forge and run a fire properly, kind of thing. And that still don't today. You see all the contests, and you got these hot rod fires, and they're just cranked full blast, wide open, and
Still not getting hot.
Yeah, it's because where is it? And Bob Marshall and Jay Sharp had a relationship right back in the beginning, and when Bob left the school he was teaching up in BC, and Jay sort of got a hold of him and brought him down. He was going to be the prancing pony that was the draw, the magnet for all of his school. But Jay and Bob had a little clash of egos, if you want to put it. I think there was no, I'm not going there. That story's gonna stay
locked
right
in.
down there in the shame box. That's, we're gonna push that. That's for when the mic's off. But, anyway, so Bob obviously knew how to run a fire, and Jay knew how to run a fire, and so being around those guys, and I was introduced to Bob really early, right from the start of the adventure. And so I knew there was a better way. And these guys, it's like that stuff. Nobody does that stuff. One of the most memorable moments at Jay's was, being down there before a clinic. He's got tong blanks stacked in the forge, and he's fitting tongs. He's got 9 pairs stacked, one on top of the other in the fire. And he's just got it simmering. It could have been in a gas fire, but it wasn't. It was in a coal fire. And he's going to burn this shit, because Jay's giving. If he's got an audience, he's performing, and he always had the pipe in his mouth, and you couldn't understand a word he was saying, anyways. I would call it fluid Sharpenese. He was speaking Sharpenese, and it was just, But it's like listening to Ian Ritchie with his thick Scottish brogue. If you're around long enough, you're going to pick up the odd word. But and Jay was just telling us stories and doing. And they're just pulling them out and tap, tink, tink in there.
Stop him and be like, hey, check your stuff.
Yeah, no, I ain't telling this old man shit. One of the first times I was down there for a clinic, all these guys would come packing their toolboxes in the shop, and Jay would run over and he'd start going through guys' toolboxes. It's somebody else's hammer. He'd pick up that thing and pitch it out of the barn door. Yeah, and it's out there on the roadway, and it'd going, hey,
what the heck?
What am I supposed to do now?
Can I go get my hammer? He didn't allow him in the shop. Say, well, what am I going to do now? I guess you're buying a J Sharp hammer.
That's one way to sell them.
But if Jay ever once had the ability to partner with somebody or be able to work with somebody, and it's not as if he was a lone wolf. He had other people he influenced in his life. But at that time, Shane came and was his, the son he kind of wished he had, type of thing. Shane was so involved, and Shane learned so much from Jay. But Jay was so hard on Shane. He was hard on everybody. Yeah. It's that drill sergeant mentality, barking at everybody. You got to beat them down and build them back up. Yeah. And that's one way to teach. I don't know if it's the best way to teach. Not everybody learns well that way, but that was sort of the scene set going into the big time learning curve. First time I met Shane was it could have been '84, and Shane was busy packing 5-gallon pail full of Jay's tools for him. Jay would come up, and Shane and we came along about the same time, and we're like 2 dogs circling a fire hydrant, giving each other a hairy eyeball, looking to sussing each other out. And I think Shane's a straight up hero, and a man of honor and integrity, and still is to this day.
Yeah, we'd love to have Shane do the podcast with us.
He's stoic. I showed that picture of Shane in the Goofy Super Clinic pictures. Everybody wearing the silly glasses and stuff. But I didn't have the silly. Shane wouldn't wear them. But I went in the archives this morning. I found a picture of Shane wearing the silly glasses down at Quick's place. I was like, I got blackmail.
Yeah, got him on there eventually.
See, he does have. He's smiling. Looking at me, he's smiling. Yeah.
Did you? So I heard you're right. You went to school in '83.
83. I'd 10 years old. My mom comes, says, "I bought your little sister a pony, but you're gonna have to ride it till she gets big enough." And I was like, "What the fuck, Mom? You don't like me? What's going on?"
It's like,
it was the world's rottenest little pony. A typical deal. You get on it, buck you off. You get back on, take you through the bushes and rub you off. You get back on it, take you in the slough and dump you. And it was just, I didn't like any of it. And we couldn't afford the first one. That didn't seem to matter. I think I've told this story a million times over the years, but
it's the first time hearing it.
It was crazy. I had 5 different paper routes at 10 years old to, buy food to, feed these things, and for what? So, yeah, that's how it started. And then to get sent off to Pony Club. So I was, I wanted to be a cowboy. I didn't want to be a cowboy. I wanted to be an Indian. I still want to be an Indian. That'd be a cool job. My heroes growing up were, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse and Cochise and Geronimo and Hiawatha and all dug deep in those stories because we had a bit of a foster home situation growing up. There were 6 kids in my family, and we had over 30 different foster kids come through it. And some of them were indigenous. That's when the government was running around, in the early '60s, pulling kids off the nations and taking them out of their houses and homes and farming them out everywhere. Because I grew up in Bowness, northwest part of Calgary, total blue collar.
Okay.
And it's easy to dump foster kids into blue collar neighborhoods, and you give them a small check to help feed the kids. Well, you take $100 foster kid check and you feed 12 kids. That was how it went. Well, if more kids you're looking after, the better the game is. So that's sort of my house was chaos growing up, and my mom was an interesting human being. Zero impulse control. She was an animal person, so we had dogs, cats, horses, fish, turtles, gerbils, every kind of thing you want. Didn't want all the stuff you didn't want. So it was just a zoo. Rabbits. The rabbit breeding experiment didn't last very well. Because one turns into 300 pretty quick overnight. Well, you got a bunch of hungry dogs staring at a rabbit cage full of. That was not that did not end well.
Or it's okay, and the problem takes care of itself.
Well, it's a lot of work to get.
But not to little kids.
Yeah. You want to see carnage, and then pay for therapy later on. That's
exactly. That would be horrible.
And Haas and Pfeffer tastes like chicken. Well, how come we didn't have chicken? More meat in that chicken than there is. We got to have 23 rabbit legs to make up with one big chicken breast. It didn't make much sense, But you start asking the hard questions that young, you're going to get a whooping. And that kind of started my whole, what the fuck moments.
Yeah.
And I was always somebody that pushed back and had questions. And so why am I putting on the stretchy pants and going to this pony club for some old crazy German dressage broad that's you got to ride the pony 5 miles off to some place you didn't want to be on a pony that didn't want to go there in the first place. Dump you off halfway there and then walk or trot all the way back to the farm, with his head tilted, so he's not going to step on the reins or the shank. So my early experiences with horses were, I would say suboptimal, I think is the term, and it just kept going on from there.
And do you remember that? Was there a farrier coming out and trimming the pony?
Oh,
or
tons,
you guys trimming
tons.
the pony?
Well, we couldn't afford the horses. That didn't seem to matter. We had a couple dozen, and you know what rape and pillage artists horseshoers are. So we knew most of the guys, and my mom was fairly gregarious, and she had a warm, wet spot for horseshoers, and so it was kind of my dad was off working, 18 hours a day so he could feed all these munchkins. So it was, we there was lots of guys that used to come out to the farm, and so Mom would trade for work or whatever, but that was on the irregular, not the regular. And then so I was always a snot-nosed kid tugging on the shirt tails of all these guys that would come out, and they'd throw you an old dead rasp or some old
Keep them touched up.
So that's how I started. That was my origin story. There was a local guy named Murray Smith, Crown Prince of Australia, and Murray was a bush pilot / horseshoer, and one of the most interesting men I've ever met. And
his title of his job, like that's a cool guy.
That's a cool guy. Yeah.
We've also got the great sponsor and partner of Forged and Brain Podcast, World Championship Blacksmiths. Without the World Championship Blacksmiths, we wouldn't necessarily have the community that we have already as farriers amongst us. The WCB is not about shunning the folks that don't compete. We're about getting together the people who do. Go ahead and be yourself because you think it is a private club. The fact that there are so many hardworking men and women that don't interact is a shame. When several farriers get together for a hammer-in or going to talk about shoeing this one gelding, ideas skyrocket and the mind goes wild with possibilities. So if you're looking for a place to test your abilities and grow your skill set, the World Championship Blacksmiths is the place to do that. Upcoming next is the National Finals in Fort Worth, Texas. That is December 3rd, and the registration deadline is November 22nd. And then after that, they have the Winter Clinic that we'll talk about here in a little bit. That is January 15th to the 17th, and the deadline is January 8th. And after that, it's the West Texas Ranch Rodeo, March 22nd. Contests on their website, they have swag and tools that you can get. They have the new Seahorse toolboxes and tool cases in stock again, so you can find those on their website, and they have the catatonic hammers in stock as well. So you can go to their website and use code BRAINS, and that'll save you 10% off on their website for orders. It's not including contest fees and net membership, but support those who support you and go online and find the World Championship Blacksmiths as a place where you can invest in yourself by investing in your skill set and grow as a person, becoming friends with those that are around the world and in the United States. And you probably find somebody that lives close to you and reach out in a community just like that.
And Murray was giving a pony club lecture on horses' feet, and I'm the kid in the back, Mr. Smith.
It was the first day of pony club you liked?
That was the very first day of pony club I liked, and I was just irritating the shit. What about this? What about that? Well, the manual says this, and Murray's like, somebody shut this kid up. Yeah. And so he said, just go to school, and everybody said the same, just go to school. I couldn't afford to go to school, but it was. And it took me a couple of years to get into it. At that time, Wolds College had a really, we call it progressive then, yet. It evolved into one of the best programs in North America, but it was a huge admission level to get into. There was like a 2-year waiting list kind of thing.
Oh, really?
And they used to advertise in Western Horseman and stuff, so it was quite a draw. And that was when horse industry was really starting to grow and evolve, and Spruce Meadows was a thing. And Calgary has been so fortunate to have had not just Spruce Meadows, but the Stampede and all of the different disciplines, and lots of oil money. So there was the nouveau riche. One of the things they do is invest in horses. You see it to this very day. There's lots of Russian money, lots of new and old oil money. Calgary still is a hub. Calgary is like, Dallas, Fort Worth North.
Yep.
And so fortunate to be involved from that date forward. And it's just been a wild ride. So
was it like when you got into horseshoeing, like after you went to school,
mm-hmm.
were you? This seems like maybe when growing up you didn't really have like a community, you know what I mean, or like
there wasn't
something to hit you like your history too.
There wasn't. It was random, and it was all just in its infancy of starting the clinic. So you know, the fellow who started this journey, Don Wenham, he would come out and he'd shoe our horses. And I went to Pony Club down the road at the Pratt's place, 5 miles from the farm. And Bill Pratt was the general manager of the Stampede at that time. And his wife taught some of the Pony Club stuff. And Don's mother-in-law, Millie, was the queen of Pony Club. And so it was, and I used to deliver papers to Don when I was 10 years old, kind of thing. So the intersectionality of my origin story was I wouldn't call it fate or destiny, but it was like, it's going to happen whether you want to or not, kind of thing. So when I came out of school, well, back it up, 2 weeks into shoeing school, it took me 2 weeks to get in. And one of the reasons why I went to shoeing school was I'm hanging on the fence, 1980, down at the Stampede grounds, watching this horseshoeing contest, because Murray and Don and Ron, and there, out of the 11 people that were in that very first contest, half of them were local shoers. And they were just starting to get into this horseshoeing thing because, Murray came back from the coast. He'd met Bob Marshall, he met Tommy Allison, he met all this cool stuff. There was a vibe that was starting to ramp up. Randy Blackstock was from the coast, and he had high country horseshoes supply store, and he was the big whiz wow deal on the coast. And he had a coal forge in the back of his pick-me-up, and he'd get pulled over for sparks out the back of the tank, setting the ditches on fire.
Rolling coal.
Yeah, yeah. And the only reason he didn't burn down the country is because it's so fucking wet on the West Coast. I don't have to tell you guys about that. But so that was it. So that was the bug. This is really cool. They're shoeing horses, and Art Gallet, my instructor at Olds College, he was the guy in the cowboy hat in that picture of that first contest. He competed using a stall jack, and he was the 2IC for Chuck O'Hanley, who was one of the first judges. And Chuck O'Hanley taught up at Olds College, and Chuck was my head instructor, but Art was the one that did all the teaching. Chuck was a drunk Irishman, and he tipped over from being sick from the drink halfway through the first day of the shoeing contest, the very first one. No. So Hank McEwen stepped in to help judge with Bill Miller. That was the very first contest in 1980. So I'm watching this stuff. I think it's really cool. Back it up even further. My connection to blacksmithing and the horseshoe and that kind of stuff. When I was 4 years old, Heritage Park is a place in Calgary. It's a historic village, and they have draft horses there. And it had just opened in Calgary, and my older sister was going to go on a school field trip to Heritage Park. And there's all these kids in the house. I snuck out the back door, and I snuck on the bus. They're never going to miss me, right? I was the quiet kid. No one's going to miss me. Snuck on this bus, went to Heritage Park, hiking around, and you hear this tink, 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 tink. It's a blacksmith in a blacksmith shop. Just a magnet, right?
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm watching, big eyeballs. Yeah. This old German guy. And he'd take a little piece of copper wire, and he'd tink, 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 he'd turn it and stamp a couple little holes and hand it to, whatever snot-nosed kid named Marshall that was standing there, kind of thing. And that's pretty fucking cool, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So then you fast forward to getting horses and being around them, having to trim our own horses and that kind of stuff, and meeting the guys, and then watching the very first contest. You just see the progression. And it's like, well, I guess this is me now.
Yeah.
I guess this is what I'm doing. So went to school and discovered how much I didn't know. 2 weeks into the first class, I broke a knife and slit my wrist, and there was 53 stitches and
wow,
17 internal. Yeah, don't do this at home, kids. But it was hard drive. I thought I was going to be a superstar and be the teacher's pet and everything else, and because I already knew how to trim a foot and stuff. And there was 5 girls in our class, and one of them was deaf, and it was like, it wasn't a special needs class, because I'd have to be included in that mix. And I was for sure a special needs kid, because thick glasses. I can't see. I was just Gorby. I was the quintessential skinny kid that got sand kicked in my face on the beach kind of thing. But horses was my thing. And Art Galley, if you talk to him today, he would tell you, there's no way this kid's going to make it. Next.
I relate. They literally called me Goober. That was my nickname all the way through horseshoeing school.
Goober.
Yeah. So it's like
wear it proud. If the shoe fits, nail it on.
Yeah. So did you get to stay in school after you cut yourself, or?
Well, Art said, pulled me in the office. Well, funny thing, I'm holding a foot, going to trim it, and I'm bearing down. I had this frost knife, old frost knife, and I used to sharpen it because, they were soft and they never kept an edge. So I'm sharpening. This is a razor. You can shave with it on and on. And it's a hard, dry foot, and I'm holding it and coming down the corner, and I go to make the turn with the frog, and it snap, and it whack.
Oh.
Yeah, and there was a girl that was watching me, kind of hunkered down, and she just kind of tipped over, just like that. She was just done. Yeah, and I pick up my hand, I look at you, open right up. So you can see all the tendons. I just nicked an artery.
Oh, man.
Just go like this. And the very first thing I did, all I could think of was go, wiggle my fingers. Geez, it still worked. It still worked. So I pulled my arm up, and now it's leaking pretty good.
Yeah, I bet.
Chuck was telling a big windy story, some jokes and stuff. Everybody's gathered around. I'm standing at the back, and teach. He's like, by the time he finally turns around and looks, well, I'm puddled up pretty good.
Yeah,
You're life force on the floor. And, so they get me to the hospital. And, I'm sitting there, and Doc comes in, and he has a look. And the first thing he says is, listen, if you're going to do it this way. Cut it this way. Don't fuck around. Cut it this way. And I say, thanks, Doc. I just kind of
keep that in mind for the next time.
Thanks, tips. But so that was my start at shooting school, and Art said you should probably maybe try again next year. It was just a 4-month course in the fall, and it was like, this is all I got. This is all I got, man. I didn't have anything else. I was staying, not on campus. I was staying with some relatives, friends, hiding out in the basement, doing the Harry Potter thing, and then didn't have any gas to go back and forth. It was so poor that I'd sold my spare tire in my truck to get home. Still had horses to feed and stuff, and so it was pretty silly. But so I spent most of the 4 months seeking alternative ways to exist, and I would do carving on gun stocks and whatever I could to get by. But it was, I knew that just enough to know that I didn't know anything when I came out. I don't think it much matters where you go to school, whether it's Olds or Oklahoma or Timbuktu. All you have is a compressed vision of what it could be. You get your anatomy and physiology and the welding and whatever, but that's just a start. And I was out of school 5 minutes when Dawn's wife, who I knew from the whole Pony Club stuff, she called me up and said, "Would you come work for Dawn?" Yeah, love to. And at that time, Dawn was the stud duck in the Calgary area. He was shooing, the lion's share of all the top end of the work, the hunters and jumpers. He shot saddlebreds, gaited horses. He shot reining horses. He was it, and he was ahead of the curve. He was putting on bar shoes, and he was squaring toes and stuffing back and drawing clips. He was a bit of a clip junkie, but his in-laws had Arab horses, so he was involved with the gaited horse market from the start, and some of the first people that he was meeting were the Randy Lucarts and the Bruce Daniels, and so Don was a phenomenally smart individual, but struggled with mental health issues his entire life, and he knew that there was more to shooting as well, and he wanted to just soak it all up. He was an information sponge, and he wanted to get dialed in, so he started importing guys like Gordon Haidt, who was a saddlebred shoer, so partly for his own benefit, because he wanted to data mine all these guys, and use the local marketplace to pay for it. So that's every clinic ever. Yeah.
That is.
That is. You know, you have full disclosure if anybody hasn't got that figured out yet. Then, you know, you're missing the boat. But and at that time, if you pulled into a barn and there was another horse show working, they just packed their shit and go. There was no communication, no camaraderie.
Unless you paid them to come out of town for a clinic.
Well, horseshoers are competitive, you know,
Yeah.
because this guy's learning something else and he's got one up on me already, so I better go find out. And all those early contests were in clinics were just, how do you pull a clip? How do you light a fire? How do you draw something? How do you crop a heel? You know, Bruce Daniels probably sold more of his anvils up in the Calgary region because, you know, he was one of the first clinicians and he was the star performer.
Yep.
At the very first World Championships, you know, because he was the legend before he even showed up in town, and Bruce had such a big, kind of bombastic look at me kind of. He was the boss, you know. He was that big bull that walked into the pen and said, "Yeah, I'm here for your cows."
Yeah.
I'm here for your cow.
Stand back. Yeah, nothing personal, but you know, mine. So that was. Sort of the start and the push towards learning.
Well, yeah, or just crazy starting your working, like your apprenticeship, working for a guy, for someone like that. Crazy to somebody where he did that many disciplines.
Beyond lucky, but the real reason that Don's wife asked me to work for him is because he was a prescription drug addict and he was hooked on Valium. And it's stupid that I didn't see or understand it because my mother was a prescription drug addict and it existed inside the family. I was just, you know, too desensitized to see it right in front of my face. And I worked for Don 5 days a week for 5 years. And first 3 years I got paid $10 a day. Yeah, and then for 2 years all I did was hold horses and sweep floors and drill and tap. You know, this is before. Yeah, everything was done by hand. And you punched every hole. You didn't have a drill press. So, and the shittiest taps in the world, and you better not break it, bud. And so, I don't know how many thousands of corkles I tapped by hand. Some little shitty $10 Canadian Tire tap. It was just fucking ridiculous. Short handle.
And not good vices.
No, none of it. Well, the first. You know, when Dave Willis brought up his hot boxes and his Valley Vices and all that, those are big time game changers.
Oh,
yeah. But Don was he was a short man, and he back punched everything. All the shoes, everything was back punched, and his back punch couldn't have been 6 inches long, and so he'd be hanging on to this thing. You know, the shoes are red hot, and he had this huge callus under his on the pad of his left hand
from all the hot stuff.
Yeah, all the hot stuff, and it was kind of like a badge of honor for him. I don't know what the deal is. It was sick. And then because something burning, one of those deals, and he survived on. He was a dipper. He probably dipped more than Poncho Willoughby, and so he's
sounds like the guy I worked for.
He's quaffing coke by the 24 pack and dipping like crazy, and then he's on Valium. So there'd be a chemical stalemate halfway through the day when shit's going to go sideways and some horse is going to pay for everyone's transgressions. And so my deal was to hang on to horses so nobody died. And
did his work have that same roller coaster, or was it?
Well, I didn't know anything different. Well, this life. Is this the way it's going to be? And we're at some pretty fancy barns, and
crazy that he could have that, like a blow up every once in a while, and the barns would keep him.
Well, you want people to disappear and go away. You know, that's one way to do it. It's like, oh, it's 2:00. Dawn's on a tear. You know, good luck finding a groom to come help.
Yeah,
you know?
They don't want to be a part of that.
You were there.
Yeah, the boy. I was the boy. Yeah, the boy's there. So didn't have a word, a name, an opinion for 2 years, and the day I opened my mouth, that was it was an epiphany for a lot of people because I'd been storing up.
Yeah.
Was there days that he would blow up on you, or is it more towards just the horses?
Yes and no. it's kind of funny in areas of conflict. So many people want to get on the fight, and I was into de-escalation. So growing up in a house of chaos, you look for calm.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm the world's greatest horseman or horse whisperer. I think it has more to do with listening. Instead of horse whispering, I think you should horse listen.
Yeah.
And there's so much psychology that is comparative to human psychology. It's just we're all animals, and act and react all the same. I always say that the eyes never lie. It doesn't matter whether it's a dog, a horse, or a person. The eyes never lie. And so when you meet somebody, and I honestly believe you give everybody and everything a chance to be decent until they prove otherwise.
Yep.
Now, you want to fight? I can dance. I don't mind. Like we'll go.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I've administered more healthy doses of judiciously applied Christian muscularity than probably was necessary or warranted. But I like to have those conversations be quick and immediate and final.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to have to talk about this again.
So you probably were somewhat a good fit for Don, because you probably just learned how to like cheek by him a lot.
Yeah. There was that, and then there was the day that Don quit. He worked for him for 5 years, and I'm sitting at the very first day on the job working for Don was the north end of D Barnett, Spruce Meadows, trimming mares and foals, because Don was connected to Spruce, and that's the way it's such a karmic boomerang to be back at Spruce Meadows, and I've kind of got a long and storied history with the place. I shod for the family for 25 years, and I shod for Charlie's mom personally for a dozen years, and we had a little relational discord issue, and I wasn't allowed to step on the property for about 17 years, and but we're all professionally compatible right now, and I can't thank Charlie and his mom and his entire family and their entire organization because they're 100% first class.
Oh yeah.
And they've done so much for not just the local fair industry, but so many people privately, and it's kind of a full circle thing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier to see the contest at Spruce Meadows. I always thought it should have been there in the first place. Stampede was just you were doing the dirty monkey dance for the tourists. You're a value-added asset. You qualified as agriculture. Stampede's a $200 million a year not-for-profit organization. Well, if you're not-for-profit, you're making $200 million a year. Well, give me a fucking break.
Yeah.
So they were paid lip service to agriculture and Western heritage by tossing the dog a bone. We're going to sponsor these programs, and we qualified that way. And because it started off as a little family project by the general manager and his family, because it wasn't just Don Wenham. It was his wife Robin and her sisters and their friends, and it was the clan. The clan was the one that was putting it on.
Okay. Yeah.
And just like all, whether it's Craig's deal or my deal, it's the women in our lives that do all the heavy lifting and do the work and the organizing. There's not a single one of us that would be here without them.
Yeah.
No.
That's why Craig says, my wife Kathleen and Craig's wife Christine cannot get together and talk. Like we've adamantly kept them apart, for 30, 35, 40 years, just to avoid disaster. They start comparing notes and nothing good can come of that.
Yeah. It is. I used to do clinics at my house even, and people ask, why don't you do those anymore? It's like, we just had a child, and I don't think you even realize that my wife was the only reason those clinics happened. You were like, I 100% agree. That is what makes it go around. So Dawn just randomly.
You just quit. I'm sitting at Spruce Meadows. It's middle of the summer series in June. You got to show up. You're going to be here. We got, it's another day of work in the middle of the horse show, and no Don. Really, I don't know if he's coming. I don't know if he got a wreck on the way or flat tire or whatever. So, and of course, people need the horses shod. And, well, where's Don? Well, not here. How about not here? It's me or nothing. Well, and you go home and call his wife, what up? And is he coming to work? She doesn't know. Click.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What he'd done was he decided to quit his Valium addiction cold turkey. He locked himself in the closet for 3 days straight.
Man.
Well, he did the rage monkey, and he was either going to live or die. And he came out of it on the other side, and then went on a journey to find himself. And it's like, he didn't know if he's coming back. I didn't know. Nobody knew if he was coming back. Nobody knew if he was, how it was going to shake out. So if you ever wonder, if you're or think that you're irreplaceable, all you got to do is stick your hand in a bucket of water and pull it out and see if you leave a hole. And there's not a single one of us that are irreplaceable, because 5 minutes after, and I learned this last year when I just about checked out, is that you got about a 5-minute head start, before they're picking up the phone, who's next on the list, because every single one of the big clients that Don had that I went to, it was like, well, tag, you're it. And that's either the best way or the shittiest way to get a client base, because you have to make or break it on your own. Well, it's the kid. It's just not Noah's kid. I know all your horses. I've been making shoes for all your horses. I've been nailing shoes on. It's same, only different. And probably the care factor would have been ramped up exponentially, because all of a sudden now it's the responsibilities on you.
Yeah.
And you're at 5 years in the game, especially if you don't have daily use habits that are reinforced, you still don't, 5/8 of fuck all.
It didn't sound like he was the guy, like he was sharing a lot with you throughout.
The benefit and the bonus for me was having a front row seat at the Worlds for all of these people and learning this is how you do it. And I steal with my eyes and my ears. I'm a note taker. This is before cell phones and cameras and everything else, and I'm analog, and so I got, because I can draw, I got stuck doing a lot of the artwork for the logos, and I was ended up doing all of the pool of shoe pictures, and if you go through the old prize list, and you can see the progression of amateur hour to the professionalism that we tried to get to.
Yep.
And the steps of the journey along the way. And
Another great sponsor of the Forge and Brains podcast is America's Farrier Supply, Well Shod. They are always known for the $10 flat rate shipping, and you can't get much better deal than that, hands down, because everything that we use and pretty much is pretty heavy, and a lot of times when you place an order from somewhere else, shipping is going to be very expensive. Well Shod outdoes everybody else in the market because of that $10 flat rate shipping. They are the biggest farrier supply that we know and have in the U.S. They make their own ambles in-house. They have the Cliff Carroll ambles, they have the Scott ambles, and then they also have the Austin Eden Scott ambles for the 200-pounder, and then down to like 70-pound ambles as well. They also have every other tool that you could possibly ever dream of on their website or in stock, always at a fingertip away to order and buy. Every single horseshoe that you could ever possibly need is on their website as well. So you can go to their website, wellshod.com, use code BRAINS, and show your support of Forge and Brains podcast and Wellshod. So go check them out. We thank Wellshod for supporting the show and helping us provide content to all you guys and sharing the insight that everybody has to offer, throughout the years of trials and tribulations of being a farrier. Hopefully that it can pass on information to new people or people that have been in this their whole life, and just share those details with everybody. So thank you, Wellshod. Go show your support. Shop on their website and use that code BRAINS. Help show your support. Thank you.
There's some of the things that I thought were game changing to the contest and that were transformative. Things like the prize lists, things like the the metal art showcase and the creative forging, some of the tests that we had, the square test, and guys would rage, and the one heat shoe stuff, the eagle eye stuff, and those, and the tongue stuff, those were conceptual things right from the very beginning. The eagle eye, the one heat shoe,
they're things that are still talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
Like the things like guys didn't, like I didn't get to go to Calgary and stuff, but people still talk about like the wood block that you had to drop in or you didn't even get judged.
Yeah.
It's like things that were very.
Well, it was
cool.
how do you set a gold standard? You have to develop it, and you have to have buy-in. You have to have things. The difference between the millimeters and the imperial measures. Everybody's using a different ruler. So all of a sudden now we had this 10 mil rule, and we thought that it was. I still believe, and Craig and I talk about this all the time. We've discussed different judging systems, different methods, different all that. We looked at, and this is as technology is starting to come into all of the metrics that we're using for everything. There was a time when Stampede decided that they're going to buy into all of the tech. Every single computer salesman on the planet was wanting that contract kind of thing, and so the trickle down was to get all of the ag programming, all of the event coordinators, everything is going to get streamlined, right? Your tech is going to make your world better, and it was like, fuck this noise.
Yeah.
This is because I can still. The fingers and toes and pencil and paper, I can still add and subtract better, and you can do the data entry and have to triple check and wait for the, the dial up, and the, all of the headaches, the massive amount of headaches that we had, sort of transitioning into tech stuff was unconscionable, and I'm not tech friendly or understanding that universe enough to be able to be patient with it. I got fat fingers and can barely run a phone, and so it's frustrating to me. And I would just, but it was test driving a lot of those different modalities. Like you wanted to have results up on the screen. You want to make it exciting for the audience. You want to be able to, that thrill of victory kind of thing, or ratchet up the intensity. You're at the rodeo and you want to be able to see those numbers right away. Want to be, where did he point? What's going on? All of that kind of stuff, and that was all part of the Stampede's mantra about putting on the show. Yep. And because it was for the audience, and that was early on, when the first video cameras were coming out and being a thing. Well, we had a local cable news company that we got a hold of, and they set up in the tent and ate cold dust for 5 days straight, and it was just ruined their equipment, and it was horrific. But it was like, we got to do this.
Noises after.
We got to do this, and it was like worse than Wayne's World, a little cable thing in the basement. It was aired at 11 o'clock on a week, like it was. But it was a first effort kind of thing. Like this could happen because I've said it forever that we have such a strong visual product, and you guys are doing fantastic with your stuff. And when you want to zero right in on the anvil face and you actually see the individual hammer blows and you can see the metal move, and also you see light bulbs going off all over. Yep. Before I had to use my eyes and ears. You got to stand all the way back there. What are you seeing?
I think about it quite often. Like, I wish I could have been around in those days of the early Calgary with the technology we have now to record it and document it, just to have it and for people to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Because imagine capturing all that history, the Dave Ducketts, the Bob Marshalls, the Bruce Daniels, all of them, instead of the cell phone or the internet, you had to go there physically and see it.
You did,
and it wasn't just the witnessing the event. It was being able to deconstruct it afterwards, whether it's in the hotel or in the bar or on the sidelines, and everybody sharing and caring and fisticuffing or whatever it is going to be you're developing all of those core memories that become history. And
that's literally, people ask us, like, I've had people ask me this weekend why we do this. Like, they always ask, like, you guys make money on this? I'm like, I would be way better off shooting horses, bud. It's literally just so we can. It's like, we can get this on record. We can get this stuff down, right? Because it's just like you said, like this right here is a debrief, pretty much, and like, so now it's on record for everybody else to listen to, and it's like, I'm sure when you had those pictures up on the screen yesterday of like the first scout and like the older Calgary, I was thinking, it's like, at that time, I'm sure those guys didn't even think it was that. It's just you're just with your buddies hanging out, forging. You went to a contest, just like we think here. So it's like I have to remind myself, like even though I have a phone in my pocket with that technology, like pull it out and put some of this down, because it is a moment. Even if you think you're like we're just hanging out with your friends, it's like it is still a moment.
It's history.
Yeah.
And to be fair, as I'm going to quote, my good friend Charlie Hethcott, history is a lie agreed upon. That is attributed.
That is a good
That
one.
is attributed to Napoleon. But the joke is that nobody can ever prove that Napoleon said it, and it's the way it is. It's the story that is told, the story that's carried on. Some stories last a long time, like 2,000 years.
Oh man.
We still have to hear about it at church on Sunday. It's such a selling of the message.
Yep.
And I've been trying to drive this forward for a long time because I passionately believe in the product. And I've talked to Craig 100 times about this very thing, about controlling the message, because that's the world that we live in today. And the amount of information that is out there, everybody goes on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. Now you have the AI stuff that's doing this is what horseshoeing looks like, and it's no, it's not. Oh, AI is going to save the world. No, it's not. You pull the plug and everything goes dark, and it's like there's still. I love this analogy. Working at a barn, Joe Vett comes along. He's going to set up all his tech, and he's got his radiograph, digital radiograph, and his ultrasound, and his shockwave, and he's got all the toys and blah blah blah. And all of a sudden, you got a power outage. Boom! Well, fuck, he's got to go home. He can't do his job. I can do my job, bud. Yep. I don't need a grinder. I don't need a power tapper. I don't what do you want? I'm going to build my tools.
Yep.
Owning your trade. Making the circle back to the Jay thing about he was the first one to be that kind of master tool maker, stud duck and gut stomped everybody. Nobody had a chance. So then you end up making rules to sort of handicap them. Like the no top tools, no swedge blocks, no this, no that kind of thing. Well, Jay would still come along and kick your ass, but it was pushing and promoting. Well, now how are we going to beat Jay? There's lots of people that never ever wanted to go in the tong class, but tell you what, we taught two generations how to build tongs, and you're the end product. If you look around, John McNerney, Jim Poor. Even Grant Moon knows how to build a pair of tongs now. Yep. Grant pissed him more than anybody else about having to build tongs. Well, when it became worthy of points.
Yep.
Well, guess who learned how to build tongs? And then guess who gets a red ribbon in the tong class?
Yep.
Yeah, whining pieces.
That's how I feel about tongs.
Me and Gavin did that at Fort Worth. Like, we felt like it had been a long time before anybody had been made to punch an eye and use that tool in the class. And so we put them through. And like right now, I love to see a whole little burst of people selling tools and making tools because they were made to punch an eye for points. Mm-hmm. And if they wouldn't have had it, if they wouldn't have been on a list, they would have never had to do it. They wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. I have a small regret. It's or a wish. It's that we would have. And we attempted to do it, especially with the tong stuff, allowing for personal interpretation. Yeah, it's got to hold a piece of 1/4 inch or a piece of 3/8 or a piece of 1/2 inch.
Yep.
There's but everybody wants to build the J tongs because that's the industry standard for us.
Yep.
And I'm still willing and wanting to find the next genius that's going to jump up and here's the better mousetrap I just built. The one tog class that really comes to mind is the Jim Quick incident, where it was absolutely epic.
Guess I'm unfamiliar with the story.
Well, you had to build a pair of tongs. You had to build a section of chain link.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing was, you always wanted to be true to the spirit of it. You have to build the tongs before you can build the product. Well, everybody is trying to Scooby-Doo a way to get the chain built without having to build the tongs to hold it, because it was two very different tests and a little bit tricky. And forge welding chain is easy, but you got to get it set up. And if you can get we give everybody 6 inches of 3/8 round or whatever it was, and so everybody was putting their Scooby-Doo thinking caps on and trying to game the system. And quick, and the thing was, well, what's a pair of tongs? Well, you can take a piece of metal and make a U-bolt and have that be a pair of tongs. You know, you can do chopsticks, you know, whatever. You use, how are you going to get this done?
Yeah.
You know, because
you couldn't have any tongs on the floor, right?
No, you had, that was the thing. And so every time we had a new deal, then you had to make some new rules kind of thing. And Grant was such a system manipulator. You know, he would always try to, and Jay Sharp was the same way. I mean, Jay had a little Jay Sharp tool that we use all along. It's just a piece of steel wrapped around like this, and he had a little half round section you could stuff your chain stock in, so you could turn it and bend it, or you stuff it in the hardy hole and bend it around so it's over a U-bolt, and then he was, you know, Joe Genius that way. But we said that you could not, excuse me, you could not have the definition of the tongs were something that articulated, you know, whatever the exact wording was. So Quick, he's another evil genius. He has this pipe thing. It's got a handle on it, and it's got a little finger that comes up, and a pokey-outy thing, and you pull it back and lock it in there. So this is fucking cool. So he throws his chain link things in the hardy hole, and he bends a U-bolt in them, and then he puts on this pipe, and this little finger comes up and grabs it. So now he's got something to hold on to his stuff, and he's got his chain built in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, while they're busy working on the tongs. Everybody shit in my atta. So now I got another international incident, and the Aussies are freaking out, and everybody's, you know, the chief steward was the thing or whatever, and I got to make a decision. You know, he's cheating. Jim Quick's standing there in the middle of this crowd, and everybody is just barking, ripping me a new one. I got to make a call. Is this tool? Because it got confiscated. Is this tool illegal? Is it a legal tool or not? And yeah.
What was the ruling? It was
the ruling. I made the ruling. I said, well, it doesn't articulate, and according to the letter of the law, you're gonna have to give it to him. And
they're just mad they didn't come up with it. Like,
Jim Keith is standing there, and he goes, I wish I would have thought of that.
Exactly.
You know? It was just classic. Anyways, I went on a hunting trip with Quick. After the thing was all said and done, that was one of the things that had to return home to him. It's hanging on the wall in the shop now, I think.
I was going to say, I was like, that would be like what an auction item that would have been later.
Yeah, no kidding.
Here's your tool back, bud.
That is great.
Anyway. It was,
how long did you end up being the steward for Calgary?
I was kind of the de facto steward for a long time, because my evolution was just a minion. I was Don Wenham's minion. I wasn't even just a volunteer. Stampede has a volunteer process, and you get a parking pass and a little chummy badge and on and on. Well, I wasn't part of the clan. I wasn't part of the family. I was just Don's minion. So I was, humping coal and pails and setting up equipment. And I was just the gopher for about 7 years. And I also wanted to compete as well. So I was competing. I was helping out. I was working for Don in my daily life, and cutting bars, doing all of that. Working on the prize list, drawing pictures, I was, the Man Friday kind of thing for it. And then I evolved into being a steward. I became a chief steward. I became became a vice chair under Art. Art DeLay was, my instructor. We got Art involved, and I was vice chair under Art for 5 years. And Stampede had a progression system. They wanted to have succession planning. So you go volunteer, you get the vice chair for a couple of years, and you become chairman, then you go on to another committee. Well, there was nobody that was migrating out of our committee. You were on the blacksmith, or you weren't, kind of thing. It was a small team. You always, doesn't matter what committee you have a small core group of people do all the work anyways. Yep. And the rest of them are there for the photos. Yep. And the parking pass. But so helper, chore boy, Steward, vice chair, chairman. And like I said at our talk yesterday, at the 20th anniversary when Craig won, Mustad was transitioning, and then the Pratt family had sort of cycled out, and Don wasn't involved at all anymore, and the sisters were evolved out, and it was moving on past all of that. And they had actually wanted Don's son, Tio, to become the next chairman. And Tio was 19 years old. He would, raised around the thing, but it was not a horseshoer, not
Okay.
It was like his only connection to the industry was being the son of Don and Robin.
Yep.
Didn't want any of it, but they were going to promote him because the Mustad family and the Pratt family were tight. When the Mustads first came along, Bill was the president of the general manager of the Stampede, but he was also heading the Calgary '88 Winter Olympic bid, and he was in all that prep stuff. And so Mustad came to Stampede to party. They'd bring their contingent, and in the early days it was all party. It was a big.
It was their end to this big show.
Yeah, it was, and most of the guys that ended up coming in the early years, it was a destination event,
Yep.
Because it's happened at the busiest time of everybody's year all over the world.
Yep.
So to take a week, which ends up being 10 days, you got to travel on either side,
Yep.
out of the busiest time of year, it's a big commitment.
Oh yeah.
It's a big commitment, and for the sponsors, and Mustad right from the very beginning wanted to own it. They wanted to own the whole thing. They felt that they had some historical and some familial connection, and it was theirs. It was their baby, and so there we are at the 20th, and I had Ole Mustad, who not my biggest fan, poking me in the chest, saying if you're going to be the next chairman, then that's it. We're out. We're pulling our sponsorship. Blah blah blah. It was like,
Is that the
bang.
guy in the picture with Craig?
That's little Carlos Lara, who was a Mustad rep, and you saw how
He is.
he's thinking to himself, they're going to send me back to Columbia. I don't want to do this because Craig had been so combative with Mustad, and he had his little rebel magazine, the Lushu, and he'd been calling everybody out, and he'd been, he's anti-corporate, blah blah blah. So I give him and he would poke fun at me all the time because we've got to go to these sponsor dinners and hold Mustad's hand and be all that, and he thought I was a turncoat agent, and he'd walk by and do, it's like you think I'm pulling a paycheck, Craig? Like, this is for you.
This is
assholes.
for you guys.
This is for you assholes.
I bet he gets it more now.
He absolutely 100% understands it now. It's like.
That picture though is hilarious.
It's one of my all-time favorite pictures because
great.
Craig is so happy he can't even fucking believe it.
He's wearing a
standing
Scooby-Doo shirt.
His biggest, and he knew it was the quintessential middle finger message. And there's little Carlos going, this is painful because it could have been one of the big Mustad boys, but no, here, Carlos.
Here, go up there.
Hold the piss bucket and the shit bag, and you got to go. Yeah, he did not enjoy any of that. I sure did, but and Craig did, and that was such a difficult year. Anyways, that was such a benchmark year, and Shane Carter and David Wilson Sr. were the judges that year, and Paul Robinson should have won. Paul Robinson could have won 10 times. Paul Robinson's an incredible hand, but he was long on his hind. His first year that Paul should have won, he had toe clipped the front or toe clipped the hinds. And he didn't read the program. He inadvertently had toe clipped the hinds.
It's supposed to be quarter clip.
It's supposed to be quarter clip, so he would have won that year. But this year, Paul was long, and it was a whole big thing with the Scottish team because they came over in force because David was judging and Jim Ferry's wife Shona was deathly ill at home, and so the whole kingdom of Scotland sort of showed up, and it was going to be a big rally thing. And Paul Robinson was their sort of their pet project. And Paul was an absolutely handy son of a bitch, and still is, and did a gorgeous job. But he was long because we had these rules. You couldn't be too long. He was way past the 10 mil rule, and so everybody at the back's calling him out, and so we got to DQ him. And now everybody is and I have to go make the call because I'm the chief steward.
Yeah.
And then, well, what about him? What about him? Well, I got to go measure everything, make sure. And then Jim Blurton is long, and I got to, actually even have to pull a shoe. And I thought there was going to be a fist fight in the back of the house that day. Blurton and I have had some historical grievances back and forth. Because the Welsh are some of the worst cheating bastards in the world. I'm going to call it out right now. They call it ringcraft, and if you don't want to,
Ringcraft.
really call it ringcraft, straight up ringcraft. If you don't want to cheat to win, you don't want to win bad enough. And it didn't matter. Was every single one of them. Jim was one of the cagiest, absolute cagiest. So, anyways, he's long too, so I got to DQ him, and it was ugly. That was beyond ugly.
But Craig was fit. He was
there. Win's a win,
yep.
right? Win's a win.
Yep.
You gotta. It was, the year that Jim and Alan Ferry put on an absolute clinic, making a set of draft horseshoes, egg heels, and the whole bit, and that was a master class. I think I talked about it yesterday a little bit, but the program had called for 5 nail holes in the outside branch, and they missed it. They didn't see it because it was custom built for them to win. But I just put the little trick buck in there just to see if you're paying attention. Yeah.
Read the
and
list.
Everybody was watching them. Everybody, because these are the masters. You think about 2-man stuff. It was this was their game. It was custom built for them. And they were finished with 10, 15 minutes left. All they had to do was rub on them. It was a 45-minute class to build a set of draft horseshoes with fuller clip, egg heels, the whole bit.
Yep.
And
Just 5 nails on the outside.
They missed that, and all the guys in the back were,
Yeah,
trying to signal them.
Yeah.
They could not because they were so dialed in, and they got DQ'd. I was a steward, and I had done the drawings for the prize list, and Jim didn't talk to me for a long time. that was an owie. That was an absolute owie.
Such a hard role to take on for you to be like, you just have to be the bad guy.
Yeah, it's not even good cop, bad cop. It's just like you're the asshole. You're going to be the bad cop all day long.
Yeah.
And we had another one of our stewards, whether it was Art or myself, or we had this skinny guy named Mike Kern. Mike Kern, see him is like he's got his Mr. Potato Head angry eyes on 24/7, just grumpy pants. He's just he wants to DQ somebody, it just is. So it's a hard job, but it's an easy job as well. So part of the game is, and that was one of the things Calgary was known for, was being hard. You got to follow the rules. And there was such an effort made to be fair to absolutely everybody. That's why we went with the standard equipment. That's why we had the rules, and there weren't a lot of rules, but the ones you have, you want to hang on to.
Mm-hmm.
Is like no picking, no scratching, no touching yourself on camera, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Just baseline level stuff, but. Everybody's got to push, and Grant was such a bad pusher, and all the Welsh were such bad pushers, and so there was always, you have to alter, adjust, make your rules, fair for everybody, but there's so many different Grant rules, Grant specific rules, like the no grease in the feet. That's a whole other conversation, but at that time, we said if you receive any help from the cheap seats, you're going to get disqualified, because
really?
and so we had set a barrier back, and you didn't want people rushing up the amble. You don't want people helping from the back. This was you. You had to own it.
Yep.
Own it all.
If somebody would have voiced something
if they would have said, "Hey, punch a 5," they would have got them disqualified.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is wild. Because today.
Oh, it's totally different.
Yeah.
And there's so much cheating that goes on in the regular. Call it cheating, call it whatever you want. Call it system manipulation. I've caught so many guys, and is it worth it? One of the best caught stories was Andy Martin. Andy Martin was on a heater the year, and he was in a tong class, and we have this top tool thing. There's no top tools. You can't have something between the work and the anvil. That was, it's pretty simple. So Andy, he's in it. He's top 10. He's got a real good shot at the title. And he takes his wheel nut and he's going to use it to, when he's doing the rivet, just to help set the head and stuff. And everybody's telling him, don't do it. Don't fucking do it. They're assholes. They're going to catch you.
And he's like, but
yeah. And Andy he's as crafty as can be. So, and I'm pretty sure Jim Ferry told him straight up. He said, please don't do it. And Paul Deddy, I think, was his partner. And so there's points for both of them. Paul's a really good hand. So, and he whips it out. It's just going to be like, he's in his pocket. It's going to be a little 10-second thing. Whip it out, put it on there, but back in. Flat busted. So he gets DQ'd. And if you get DQ'd in the class, it removes you from contention in the top 10. So you not only did you lose points, you weren't in the top 10. You're done. Sad Andy. Who was upset was Paul, because Paul was going to end up being top 10 as well. Paul's top hand. And
did he go for your striker as well?
Yeah. So
wow.
it dicked both of them.
Since day one of Forge and Brains podcast, Farrier Box has wanted to work with us, and we love the fact that Farrier Box works with Forge and Brains podcast. Every other month, they're sending you a box of tools that you can put straight to work in your everyday practice. They're not tools that have just sprung on the market. They're actually tools that have been tested and used to figure out if these are actually worthy products that you can actually put to work. I personally know that Bodie Turnka, he's the one that tests these products and makes sure that they are worthy enough to be sent out in the Farrier Box. So go to their website, farrierbox.com. You can use the code BRAINS, and that'll get you 25% off your first month's box. That's a pretty damn good deal. Pretty much in every box that has come, I have implemented them in my day-to-day practice. So this last month, with the Virginia WCB on the next list for an individual contest, it came with a set of tongs and 2 pieces of steel just to get you started on your practice, so you can have a jump start on figuring out how to make them shoes. There's also another product in there that was recommended by a previous guest on Forge and Brains, Tyson Clark, because he is actually the judge for the upcoming Virginia contest. So if you're looking for something to spicing up your everyday shoeing practice, look at Farrier Box as a way to innovate your shoeing practice and just kind of introduce you to different tools that you may not necessarily try and get by just searching online and get them. They're going to send them to you without the hesitation that you may or may not want it. And then you get to try them and test them out whether you like them or not. 9 times out of 10, I'm using every product that gets sent to me in the Farrier Box, so you won't be disappointed with anything that gets sent to you. So check it out, farrierbox.com. Use code BRAINS. Save yourself 25% off your first month's box. And then every other month after that, you'll be receiving the great old Farrier Box in the mail.
And so we had a grandstand presentation. That was one of the things that set Calgary apart as well. You get all the different country representatives get to be presented on stage in front of 20,000 people. It's kind of a, our Olympics. It was a really super cool thing, and it was kind of a big fucking deal. And it set everything apart. Nothing compared to standing in the middle of 50,000 people on a beautiful day at Spruce Meadows in front of the entire world, national television, all that kind of stuff, right? But this is what it was at the moment. I think I was chairman at that time. I'm standing beside Andy. Andy's got a big lip on because he doesn't even get to go on stage. And maybe he was, but I'm standing there, we're watching it, they're waiting for the chance for the guys to go up on stage, and he'd never been there in front of the crowd before, that kind of big, and it's such a big bounce back response, with the cheering and this and that, because they were waiting for a break in the chuck wagon racing to be presented. So it's a pretty cool experience. Yeah. And we present the check and the trophy and stuff right at the front of the stage and stuff. And I said to Andy, a bit of a bummer, huh? Yeah. And he goes, yeah. He goes, oh, well, it kind of sucks to be you. But I said, what do you think? This is quite the view, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, it's quite the view. I says, you know what? The view is even better right up at the front where they present you the check.
That's the best spot.
That's the best spot. I said,
Best seat in the house.
Yeah, that could have been you. dickhead.
I think if there's something for people to take away from this is pay attention to the rules. And
Don't even pay attention to just like cheating never worth it.
yeah.
Well,
And I'm sure, and it's a little bit intention, you know, like I'm sure that's what you noticed, like when to catch somebody is like when they were doing the looking around, pulling out of pockets thing. It's like you knew that was a no. It wasn't even
100% new, and it's not like how big a difference did it make?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't even worth it.
That was a $10,000 mistake. Is what it was. So
man,
there's so many stories like that. You know, there's a little gal that is notorious, competed hardcore for a while and just a wild child, and she's going to remain anonymous, but her name's Raleigh Desiato.
That was my guess.
Yeah, and same thing with a rivet. You know, we're going to supply the rivet for the tongs and stuff, but you know it was always kind of a thing. But she wanted to use her own rivet, and you know, she's wearing a little skinny wife beater shirt on, and she's hiding the rivet. She's hiding the rivet down her top area. You can see the rivet right there, and it's like, Raleigh, don't use a rivet. What rivet? don't make me take it off you. Just
try to give you a mulligan here.
just don't do it.
Yeah.
No, Raleigh's going to be Raleigh.
So since now it's at Spruce and you get to now go and just watch and be there.
I'm a fan. I'm just a fan. I get to. I'll go and help and support wherever I can.
Yeah.
Charlie is. I've known Charlie since before he was born, but it's not been until the last half dozen years that I've been actively involved with giving Charlie some room to work on his horseshoeing and his forging skills and his personal development.
Yeah.
And Charlie comes over. He's got a really beautiful shop at Spruce Meadows, but he's over at my little hidey hole over the hill. It's a safe haven. It's a safe place. Charlie keeps a beer stick. There's a decent beer fridge that's always stocked. So it's just simply for hydration purposes only and therapy. And so we have little gatherings. We have forging nights. We have guys come along, but it's kind of a communal safe spot for everybody to come and improve. And I don't know why Charlie hates my anvil. I've got a Stampede unit, one of their forges and animals, and he's committed terrible, heinous abuse to that poor animal. But in fairness, he's not the only one.
No, it's a part of what happened.
There's a lot of therapy that can be had in front of an animal.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I'm just happy to help where I can. And,
are you enjoying? Do you have high hopes for where things are heading from what you've been able to just observe? Because it is a different stage when you're getting to just go to these contests and observe the whole thing and not trying to be working. So it's like you've had a full view of it at this point. Do you have high hopes of it?
I have always. If I didn't believe in the program and the value of it, and I don't know how much time I have left, but I'll give you a quick illustration about the real true value. I've been involved in the contest from nuts and bolts from the very beginning to the very end, and when Stampede shut us down, and they were going to revamp. I give the history up to 2014. Well, they had a little dog and pony show for a couple 3 years after that, but I refuse to recognize it because it was not a world championship.
Yep.
It was nothing more than a little taffy pole for show and tell. So sorry if you're a WCB member that attended one of those in those transitional years, but that was nothing more than show and tell.
Yep.
Are you able to say, I mean, just for my own curiosity, are you able to kind of talk about why it went away in 2014?
Yeah, a lot of different reasons. One of the things was the coke fires. So the big top tent was put up in '82, and it was supposed to be just a temporary structure for some of their different eventings.
Okay.
It was a sponsorship opportunity for John Deere, for Coca-Cola, for Budweiser, because a big tent so you can have lots of surface space to do some advertising.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, running coal fires full blast for 10 hours a day for 5 days on, it's a little hard on
things get dirty.
Yeah. So it had been reskinned, you know, 2 or 3 times over the years, and it was repurposed. And nobody liked the coal fires. You'd walk in there, there'd be especially after the shoeing, you know, there'd be nothing but a haze for, you know, you lived in. And it wasn't just that, it was the air that, the hydrogen sulfide, it was toxic, it was nasty, and so and it rains coal dust on. So you got 1,000 people sitting in the stands that are just getting, you know,
Filthy.
bombarded, and so nobody liked that. We'd had a Stampede director that was an environmental lawyer at that time. That's when everybody was starting to, you know, look towards green initiatives, this and that, and on and on.
Gave him a heart attack.
Yeah, he was not our friend. We'd always been a bit of a rogue committee on park, doing our own thing, raising our own money. You know, they kept trying to ease us out of the picture. You know, you either got to be at the very beginning or the very end. We actually even started sometimes before the Stampede had actually started, just so that, you know, it wasn't a logistical headache for them. Getting horses on park.
Yep.
You know, the sponsorship relationship had changed dramatically. We used to get a lot of money out of Mustad back in the day, and then it'd be, you know, law of diminishing returns. And in 100% full fairness to Mustad, they were incredible sponsors forever, transformative, and have continued to back the industry.
Yeah.
But, you know, what's you know, what is your dollar value per contact kind of thing? They'd have been far better off, you know, buying a chuck wagon tarp for $100,000 and having it go, you know, every night for 10 nights and you know, being the hoof care people.
Yep.
And getting it televised nationally. They were far better off. There's 1,000 horses on Stampede Park every single Stampede. Every single one of those horses needs some sort of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you do that? And that was, you know, when Mustad was really pushing the hoof care people kind of thing, all of the upsell, all of the other accoutrements, but they didn't see that. And one of my last conversations with Hans Mustad, you know, was about future stuff. Because we had that chat back in 2007 when Craig had cracked out with the WCB, and there was this mortal struggle for the ownership of the name. And Craig had just changed it enough, and Stampede was mad, and they were going to sue, and Mustad was going to sue, and they were going to pull out, and blah blah blah. And I was stuck in the middle of all that because they were blaming me for Craig being Craig, and oh, you're the cause of all this, and Craig, of course, said, yeah, he is. Thanks, man.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Here, hold this. And yeah, so I didn't want, obviously we kept going. We kept going for another 8 years after that. And my whole purpose and intention was to not let it die. So I had sent Mustad off to Spruce Meadows. I said, listen, if you guys don't like Stampede and this is not working, the very best place for you is at Spruce Meadows. Spruce Meadows happens, the big Masters happens in the fall, so it's a better time of year. Yep. It's the premier equestrian facility in the world, I think. And it's world class, first class, and it's a dedicated horse marketplace, and it's national television. You go check the boxes, and Spruce Meadows knows how to look after their sponsorship. You know, they're the best in the world at it. You know, so why wouldn't you? And so at that time, at that day, I had my relational discord event with Charlie's mom, and I was uninvited from being there. My client base was primarily hunters and jumpers, and I was shooing for the Maddens and the Huffs and the Delajoyos and half their sponsorship group. I was, you know, sort of the it guy at the minute because I was involved with the Stampede, and we had just moved out to a farm, and between my wife and I and everything else, we were running 4 different businesses and shooting everything with hair on it, and for some of the most high needs customers on the planet. And then this thing comes up, and I might not have been my best self when I used bad language words, but I'll take full responsibility for not being a better, more mature human being at the time. But I was dealing with a little bit. So I told my dad to go out to Spruce and, have a conversation, look around, talk to them.
Yep.
And they were kind enough. Excuse me. They were kind enough to give Mustad the full meal deal tour right in the middle of their incredibly busy horse show.
Yeah.
And go kick some tires, look around, see what could be. If Mustad had some foresight on that day, they could have transitioned. They could have built a shoeing shop. There was not a shoeing shop on Spruce Meadows property at that time.
That is
And they could have been the
name right
the
in front of the
building.
building.
On and on. It would have been. I saw the symbiotic relationship potential, and it took a long time to push and promote that. But I'm beyond happy that they're there now.
Yeah.
And so the first 2023, when we had the first Blacksmith World Championship at Spruce, and now at that time Mustad has their whole stable full of show ponies, past world champions that they're doing all the Con Ed stuff and the YouTube stuff and the promotional stuff, which is to me is fantastic. But it's what are you selling? You're selling product, and in all 100% fairness to Mustad, they just want their cake and eat it too, and get their best value for their. So when Spruce Meadows has a trade show, if you want to sell your wares, then buy a table.
Yep.
Join the party, 100%, and or become a sponsor.
Yep.
All of those different opportunities existed, but to show up and do a little guerrilla marketing and give a little bit of a middle finger to Craig and everybody on the day one of the first thing, that was. I'm gonna call it out. That was low rent, boys. That was fucking chicken shit low rent, and I'll tell the world.
Yeah.
And for what it could be, not having the foresight, not having the vision, and nobody asked me, so I didn't say, but it was. I'll say it now. It was. It was short-sighted.
Yeah.
And going forward, so then you've got a lot of their show ponies there. You got Beanies there. You got, Verinis there.
This episode is brought to you by Yukon Forge. Lately, John has come up with a new design on his punches. So previously they were wooden-handled punches, and now he's re-innovated his line where they're welded-on steel-headed punches. So he's got E-heads and City heads up on his website now. He's also got every other tool that you could need and use in your everyday practice available on his website, yukonforge.com. He's taken over the drive and hammer business from Flatland Forge, and now it's all Yukon Forge, and they have the Edward Martin style hammer as well with the thistle on there. You can check that out. I use it every day in my shoeing practice now, so it's dang sure it works pretty dang good, so I'm happy with it. John's also come up with the propane nut to make ease of tightening on your propane for your forge to the propane bottle and not have to have a wrench on hand. He's got the 2-pound hammers, 1 3/4 rounding hammers, 2 1/2, 2 1/4, anything you could need, he's got it on his website. He's also got replacement handles. If you need to replace a handle in one of your hammers, you can find those on there as well. So when you go to yukonforge.com, use code BRAINS and save yourself a little bit of money and get 10% off your order.
Could have been the promoting of the best. It was a cool thing. I've been part of this thing for a long time. The 2010 Champion of Champions contest was such a historic moment and such a cool deal, and it'll never get replicated again. But something different could happen.
Yep.
What's so special about the Champion of Champions?
It was all the past world champions gathered at Stoneleigh for a one day, one off, one class, shoe horse and build a shoe kind of thing.
Okay.
And all the past world champions of that day, up until that time, were there, Austin was there, but he didn't compete. His back was buggered. Bill Poor did not show up. He was busy being Bill somewhere.
Yeah.
Duckett showed up, and of course he has a historical pissing match with Mustad, and he was trying to foment an insurrection right from the get-go, and he wanted to refuse to compete, and everybody should do a Milwaukee protest, sit down. He didn't get iced, but it was fractious right from the get-go, and but it was so incredibly cool, and it was for charity. It was a big check to the winner to go to charity. It was just a show pony show, and I got to go help judge with one of my personal heroes, David Wilson Sr. And the first day, while everybody's getting set up and trying to make this thing happen, and Duckett was running interference and
So crazy.
he refused to wear the shirt for the group photo. It was grievous, and I had to go over there. Again, it's not a paid gig. It's do it for a favor, and I couldn't afford to take the time or the money or the effort to do it, but I did, because I'd never ever been to Stone. I'd never been to the motherland. I'd never. That was never my focus. I was always trying to run a business and a family, and so it was absolutely a monumental event. And there was so many good core memories, but I just finally said to everybody, listen, I didn't get dressed up for nothing. I mean, you're all here because you're Stampede champions. You're all world champions. Let's act like it and get this thing done. You compete, don't compete. I don't give a fuck. But I'm here for a reason. Don't make me regret it. So it happened, and it was super good. Bob Marshall was there competing. He stepped up. Ben Yeager, I'd give my phone to Ben, and Ben took a whole ton of pictures, and thankfully, because it was beyond cool. And the cooler part was the next day, everybody came back to the fire. There was 6 or 8 of them, and David Wilson and Bob put on and Duckett, they all put on a little show and tell.
I have watched those videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Many a times.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I know
These
who you're
little
talking
clips.
about now. Yeah.
Guys are huddled around.
Yeah.
And they're giving them and
Yeah, I think
It's
I have
good
seen
stuff.
that.
it was loose, and it was real, and it was intimate for just the people that were there,
Yeah.
and those that knew, and they weren't competing. It was sharing.
Yep.
And that's the way it should be, and it's the absolute coolest thing about what we do and the contesting. It's not the title or the check now the check is it's a nice check to get.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, the companionship, the learning, the education. Most of that comes before you ever get to the contest.
Yep.
It's in the prep. It's in the going to figure out how to do stuff. And at that Champion of Champions thing was Richard Ellis. Richard was there. And Iceman, I was fortunate enough to get to spend some real quality time with Richard. And one of the coolest guys ever. Cool, not just in his daily, but a cool competitor. He wasn't running like crazy. He was methodical and direct and unbelievably handy. And Richard Ellis probably could have won the title 10 times. Because whenever the process would come out, the English team, the Scottish team, the Welsh team, British Army team, they'd call Richard to do a breakdown on the pool of shoes to figure out how to do it best. And Richard was there, and he wasn't feeling great. Everybody was taking a piss out of him. Come on, Richard, hop in the fire. Let's go. Oh, come on, compete. No. He was just a gentleman about it. And I was one of the guys that was taking a piss out of him. I really wanted to see him. I wanted to see him hand these guys their ass in a pail.
Yeah.
I really wanted to see that happen. And he could have done it, and he just politely declined. Well, it turned out he had this big cancerous tumor in the back of his neck, and it was eating away at his. And it wasn't long after that he had, a big operation. He had to wear a halo for a long time. He was suffering, but nobody knew. He never said. He wasn't bragging about it. Nothing. He wasn't looking for sympathy. It was just class act. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get to see him and share and have a drink and a conversation with him before it was all said and done. That was a really big deal, for me,
Yeah.
and and get a chance to judge with David Senior. And we had instituted some blind judging protocols at the Stampede before that. We were trying to continue to find a way to make it as fair as possible, because otherwise it's just figure skating, and there's even Billy Carruthers will admit, there's all of his championships, there was a couple that were gifted to him because the judge liked them or they were pals or whatever,
Yeah.
it's and that's one of the reasons why I I've always been kind of against the show and shine. Now we're at a place where the rubbing on the feet and the greasy and the shoes, making jewelry. It's beyond cool, but it's one of the last things that the horse cares about. And when the emphasis goes to pretty, it's the style versus substance conversation. And the last big international incident we had was about grease on the feet kind of thing. And Grant made it incredibly personal. It was day one, the first day. Again, you're looking for the to DQ somebody, make it real. And it was Spud Allison and Hausman that were judging, I think. And it blind judging, it goes behind, and they get called out. There was these four people, and the judges, they don't know who the feet are, but these four individuals were going to give them a 0 on their trim score because their feet were greased or whatever it was. They were going to get DQ'd on that class for having grease on the feet. And it was Grant, it was Billy, it was Nigel Fennell, and a Frenchman that part of that crew. So they were all sneaky. And the funny thing is, Chad Chance was videoing it for us. He was doing his hoof watch thing.
Yeah.
We got him on video, dead to rights. It's like, can you roll the tape, please, judge? Boom.
Yeah,
and
what time.
from my perspective, like, I give a fuck if you want to put anything, jizz all over your horse's foot. I don't care. But it was called out and identified by the judge. So now I got to go. I get to go be an asshole again.
Yep.
I got to make the call. Don't make me have to make the call.
Yeah.
And Grant just lost his shit. Well, he's got his barrister on speed dial, and it was a big deal. And it took a long time for Billy to have a conversation with me, because you think, you're always trying to game them or homer them or whatever. But as a judge, if you got to pick up 100 feet and they're all greasy, it's sinful. It's hateful.
Yep.
It was like the year in the four-man that Jim Ferry and Alice Johnson were judging. The four-man in the Welsh, you're supposed to hammer draw the clips, not ball punch them, kind of thing. Well, they'd use the comb peen and they'd set it down. They use that, and it was such a little cat and mouse game. You're stewarding, you're marching up and down. We didn't have somebody at every station like AFA. You just have enough people to, and every single person, every single competitor is a steward. Nobody wants to let anybody get an advantage, so they're going to call them out. They're all, you got 100 set of eyes on instead of just 4. So, their feet had already, the judges had already been down the line. They picked them up and they had judged, the feet, and somebody rats them out. Oh, they ball punched, blah blah blah. So I got to go down there and make the call and pick them up. Yeah, there's no denying it.
Yeah, no one's that accurate, man.
Yeah, but they're going to deny it.
Yeah.
They're hammer drawn, right? So now we're going to split hairs. It's a semantical debate.
Yeah.
The whole team, and this is. They're all worried that they're going to lose the points and they're going to get punted from the top 10. Well, 3 of the 4 guys on that team were going to wind up being in the top 10, and I'll never forget it. Blurton's just in my face and pokey chest and up my ass and calling me my ancestry and heritage and everything is getting called into question, and it's
that's gonna help.
Yeah. And Billy's just standing behind him. He's got his arms crossed like this, on, and it's getting personal, and. So Billy just goes, how does this affect our standing in the top 10? I gotta make a call. I gotta make a new rule on the spot.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it doesn't. Oh, fine, let's go for a beer. Just like that. The second it meant nothing to him personally, he's out. Yeah, we're all good. Say bye. Just like that. That was so. All of this drama was for nothing. It was just all about the individual, and it was the same when Grant got DQ'd the first time. It was a 4-man, and my buddy Blaine, he was the chairman of the day. He had brought his own personal pair of Clydesdales in, and of course he wanted the best in the world to shoe him. So Grant had his ringer team, and he had the O'Shaughnessy's, and he had Jonathan Nunn and himself, and they wound up. He'll say that they weren't false now. I mean, it doesn't matter. They got ratted out because one of them was leaking in the toenail, and if it hadn't been for the Chairman Blaine's own personal horse, it would have been probably just fine to pull a nail and throw somebody in there. It would have been fine, but he got ratted out, so now I got to DQ him. Well, Grant and the 4-man did count for points. That's why he had his ringer team, and he lost his shit. And here we are going at it again, and well, I didn't do it. That was my other teammate. I said, well, there's no I in team.
Yep.
Yeah, and to quote the Kobe Bryant analogy, he goes, yeah, but there's a me in that motherfucker. There's no I in team, but there's a me in that motherfucker.
First I've heard that.
So you're prepared to throw all your teammates under the bus as long as it didn't matter, as long as you got yours. And it's like, wow, yeah. I knew who you were before, but I definitely know who you are.
No, you really know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm not even going to call Grant out for holding a piss bucket for the vets now, Mr. Elusive and Exclusive. It's just like, everybody makes choices. Right?
They do, man.
So
They do.
Well, Marshall, a question that we usually ask on the Forge and Brains podcast, we call it the Mount Rushmore. And so I want to ask you, I mean, you've been influential amongst so many great guys throughout the years, and so many of them. And it can be horseshoeing related or not horseshoeing related, but who are 4 people that you hold in a high regard and have kind of made you be the person you are today?
I don't have 4. I'd have to go by genre, kind of thing. So if I had to, to start off, the most influential people to me, my top 4 local Mount. I don't think you should call it Mount Rushmore. I think you should call it Mount Shoemore.
Mount Shoemore?
I've got a drawing that I made of Mount Rushmore, but it's got these 4 faces on it, and I'll send it to you guys later. It has Jim Quick and Jim Poor and Craig Turnka and Shane Carter. That's what I call my.
I have that picture in my shop.
Yeah.
I have a picture of them standing.
So
That's cool.
I've drawn that, superimposed it on the front of Mount Rushmore. So that's my Mount Shoemore.
Okay.
Those 4 guys. But locally, I would have to say it was Murray Smith, the Australian Crown Prince that started off. Don Wenham, beyond influence. Art Galay, who's just a personal hero of mine. He was my instructor at college, and then probably the guy who's anonymous, nobody really knows, and that's Carl Goldgrape, who was old square-headed German from Edmonton that had started, the contesting stuff and was influential for Don. Carl, and he never knew it, but the influence he had that trickled down going forward was immense, because it was like Carl to Don, to me, to, going forward. And I've been fortunate to be able to have some minor influence over the years and helping with the contest and be able to shape it. But the other ones would have to be, Edward Martin, Jay Sharp, Bob Marshall, and Dave Duckett.
Yeah.
So I have that genre. And every single one of those gentlemen has been beyond influence. So many of the decisions that were made that I helped to promote were because of what would Jay do, what would Edward do, what would Bob, what is the sort of the driver, and then there's the English ones, the Scots, Jim and Alan Ferry, David Wilson Sr. You know, there's so many that were, you know, core, just core, and then you have the Grants and the Billies and the Bazins and the Beanies, you know, that core group right there. How can you know, they're the, you know, the English, or the Great Britain version of the American squad.
Yeah,
you know, and
sure.
they all kind of were hammer and tong at it at the same time in their careers, you know, and to pick one over the other, I couldn't. But for sure, the people that had all that base influence on me to start, the people that were legends, like the Jays and the Edwards, and the people, and the Bobs and the Duckets, you know, all. I'm the luckiest son of a bitch in the world. I know that for a fact, because I've not only had a front row seat, I've got to, you know, data mine as much as I could out of all of these people. You know, I might look like I'm, you know, asleep at the wheel, but I'm taking notes.
Absolutely. Sounds like it.
I'm taking notes.
Man, we appreciate so much taking time. Like, it's always hard to ask somebody to come into the little office, and there's so many people out there and such good conversations to be had. So really appreciate you taking your time to come in and talk with us and get some of this down on tape for other people to enjoy.
Yeah, I enjoy the heck out of what you guys do, and I have nothing but hope and you know, anticipation for where it's going to go. You guys are doing a hell of a good job.
We appreciate it.
And you get the fact that you have such a strong visual product, and you got to get it out there. And there's so much information that's it's curious. You know, listen to the different podcasts on and on. There's always be somebody going, "Oh, this happened and that happened," and then I'll get guys come back to me and go, "Hey, I heard about, you know, this story from the Stampede." And you go, yeah. I know. Yeah. Or no, that guy's full of shit. That didn't happen like that. I'll tell you what really happened. So
Resparks it though.
Yeah,
Keeps it going.
And there's nothing but a cascade of those stories and memories and stuff. When I was doing my presentation, I thought this needed to be like a minimum 3-parter or 5-parter, and then every single one of those sections would have had stories. Like I said, every one of those pictures had a story that went with it, and I gotta maybe get it down and out of my head so I can make some room. My database is full. I got no more.
Exactly.
Need to
Get it on
reboot.
another hard drive.
Yeah, you have to do something like that before it's all gone.
Well, we'll have to do this again then someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, there's no point having Kunsagi be the sole author of all of that.
Exactly.
I've got a ton of Travis stories too, and it's like, for a lot of people, and like I've got stories like I told Chris Gregory that would probably end marriages and ruin careers.
Exactly. I bet. Awesome, Marshall. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Man, thank you.